reading the problem, it says the graph of this, okay, one sticking point, like one place I have seen many students get stuck on an AP problem is they'll see an equation like this and they just can't, like they don't recognize what they're looking at. Like as you read the problem, you should see this and immediately think something. Like what should you be thinking as you see this equation? For hands up to everybody. Nathan?
Graph of y.
In this case, it's just called y. So this is our equation for finding any coordinate pair on this graph of y. How many knew that? 2 points. Okay, 3 for Nathan. So okay, we have this graph. This graph has a point of inflection at 1, -6. What is the value of b? I've mentioned many times that when they ask you to find a constant, you shouldn't go looking for the constant. You should do other things and hope that you'll just find the constant. So, and as Matt just said, a key to the test is like read a problem and hopefully remember a flashcard that'll help you get started. There's a flashcard here that you'll need to remember. The flashcard looks like this. If f has an inflection point at x = 1, then you're guaranteed that f double prime of 1 has to be 0. Or f double prime of 1 has to be undefined. Be careful though, the opposite is not necessarily true. That means just because f double prime has a value of 0 doesn't mean there is an inflection point. Here's an example. If your f double prime sign chart looks like this, f has an inflection point at x = +1, but f would not have an inflection point at x = -1. So when you read this problem, this flashcard needs to come to your mind. Question? Good chance to write that down if you've chosen to do so. Okay, so using that, let me close a couple of these windows and we'll speed up the deal here a little bit, I think. Okay, very good. So points for the whole room. So now that you've seen the flashcard, raise your hand if you can tell me what would be a logical thing to do. So we have, like looking at that flashcard, what would be a logical way to proceed on this problem? Always keeping in mind that you shouldn't worry about the next step until you do the current step. So even if you can't see why the current step might help, don't worry about it. Just do the current step and see where you end up going. Preston?
I'd find the double derivative of that y equation.
Cool. How many would have said that? 0.2 for Preston. So, y prime equals 3x squared. A is just a constant like, say, 5. So if it were 5x squared, you'd take 2 times 5. But because 2 times 5 can be written as 10, we would write 10. Not knowing A, we just have to write 2 times A. Wave at me if you need more discussion on that. So. then this would be like, I don't know, 6 times x. So the derivative of 6 times x is just 6. So that's just b. Question? Cool. It's then y double prime. Helps if I do something besides just rewrite it. That made no sense. So this is 6x plus 2a. Questions? So it ends up now what? So the way I work AP problems is I think of the big picture, I do some little steps, and then I go back to the big picture. So what are we thinking now, Micah?
Probably going to want to solve for A because you can't find B without solving A. So I'd probably plug, I'd plug 1 in for X right there, yeah.
Keep telling me what's right, Mike. You're doing great.
Plus 2A.
It has to equal something.
0 because there's an inflection point at 0. The flashcard said that there's an inflection point at x equals 1 and last time is equal to 0.
It's perfect. So this curve has an inflection point at x equal 1, which means the second derivative when x equals 1 must have a value of 0. It's perfect. Raise your hand if you would have told me to write this. 0.2 for Micah. So A is -3. Questions? Please.
Are you treating the 2a just like a constant? Just a
Yes, so A and B are constants, so 2 times A would still be just a constant.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? 2 points. Okay, so I did a little step. I got to go back to big picture, which means I want to read the problem carefully and try and figure out how knowing this might help me make more progress on the problem. Suggestions where it should go? One second part here, just to repeat the change. A few more hands now. Let's go loud.
So you know one constant A, and you need to try to find B, and you already know 1.1 comma -6. So plug in -6 for y in the first y equation, and plug in 1 for x, and you already have A, so you can solve for B now.
So who had their hand raised and would have told me to do that? 2 points, 3 for Mallory. Good work. You want to talk about it? So it goes back to the idea, and that's why I keep quizzing you on this. When you see this equation, you have to remember this can be used. You can plug in some known x, and then you can find the y value, or you could plug in a known y value and then find the x. But what Mallory and several others noticed was equations are just statements that have to be true. So if this is for finding the xy pairs, when the x coordinate's 1 and the y value is -6, this has to be a true statement. That's what an equation is. It's something that has to be true. And we know the value of A, so the only thing left to find is the value of B. So there's some B value that will make this a true statement. All the other pieces have to fit. There we go. The algebra, so. So -6 equals Green is not working. -7 plus 1 is -6 plus B. So B is 0. Am I making mistakes, or is that correct? Questions? This is a really good example of unique problem. AP test writers just keep coming up with them. It's really amazing to me that I've been studying the test for 12 years, and every single year they come up with a new way to ask stuff that's just totally different than they've ever done before. This is a good example of that. And that's why you have to just continually rely on the flashcards to get through the problems. Cool.